A lot of people hear the term financial abuse and instantly imagine something really extreme, like someone literally locking their partner out of bank accounts or controlling every penny they spend. And yes, that absolutely can happen. But honestly, a lot of financial abuse is much quieter than that. It builds slowly. It becomes normal slowly. And a lot of people don't even realize they're in it until years later when they suddenly feel trapped. And I really want to talk about this properly today because this is one of the most common things I hear from people that message me privately. Now look, as much as this can absolutely happen to men and women both ways, when people speak with me about this, most of the time it's women in relationships with husbands where this dynamic has developed. So I'll be speaking about it from that angle today. But if the household dynamic is flipped, then obviously reverse it. What I really want to cover is not just what financial abuse looks like, but how it actually feels so you can recognize it. Because sometimes people don't identify it just from the actions. They identify it from the emotional feeling underneath it. That feeling of their nervous system just not feeling safe. Or, for example, I just don't feel equal to my partner. Or in many cases, I feel financially trapped. I feel scared about what would happen if this relationship ended. That's usually where people start waking up a little bit. And honestly, one of the saddest parts about financial abuse is that it often happens inside relationships where one person has sacrificed the most. They paused their career. They raised the children. They supported the household. They emotionally held everything together. They were the glue of the family. And over time, without even realizing it, they became financially dependent on the very person who now has the leverage over them. That's the scary part. Because healthy relationships are meant to feel like a team, not an employer and an employee. Not a power imbalance. Not one person feeling like they need permission to exist comfortably. And one of the first signs I see all the time is control disguised as being responsible. Things like you'll hear them say, I'll handle the finances. Or they'll say, you're just not good with money. Just leave that stuff to me. And at first, it can sound caring, especially if someone's had a history like that, especially if someone is overwhelmed or busy raising children. But then slowly, they stop having visibility. They don't know what's in savings. They don't know what debt exists. They don't know what assets are owned. They, at stages, might not know what protections they have personally. And then one day, they realize they have no financial independence at all. I spoke to a woman once who had been married for over 20 years. She raised the children, supported her husband's business from the very beginning. She did everything in the home. And she told me she felt guilty buying herself shampoo. That sentence genuinely stayed with me for a long time because that's not partnership. That's conditioned someone to feel small. And financial abuse doesn't always look aggressive either. Sometimes it's very covert. It can be very subtle, especially in narcissistic relationships. A narcissistic person often wants financial control because financial control creates emotional control. If someone feels financially trapped, they are less likely to leave. And covert narcissists are especially good at making someone feel selfish for wanting equality. You'll hear things like, after everything I do for this family, or everything I do for you, you should be grateful. You'd have nothing without me. Or they'll make someone feel irresponsible for even asking questions about money. And over time, the person stops asking, stops questioning, stops advocating for themselves. And when they do this, it's not because they're weak, but because psychologically they've been trained that bringing it up creates tension, guilt, conflict, or emotional punishment. And one thing I really want people to understand is this. Sorry about that. Financial abuse is not only about money. Financial abuse is about freedom. That's the real conversation. Freedom. Because when someone controls your access to money, opportunities, work, transport, or stability in your life, they are indirectly controlling your choices. And that's why so many people stay in unhappy relationships longer than they want to. Because emotionally, leaving is one thing. However, financially surviving afterwards is another. And honestly, this is why I always encourage people, and especially women who are in long-term relationships where they've become financially dependent, to quietly make sure they still maintain some independence where possible. And I'm not saying this from a negative place, obviously. I'm saying it from a protective place, to protect yourself. It's really important that you know your finances, understand what exists, know what accounts there are, know what protections you have legally in your area, understand where money is going, and have access to all important documents. Remember, you're an equal. You should have access to everything. Maintain some form of your own income if possible, even if it's small, because life can change very quickly sometimes. And one of the biggest shocks people experience is not during the relationship. For many people, the shocks come after it ends. That's where things become terrifying for many people, because suddenly they're trying to rebuild from nothing while the other person continues living inside the life that they built together. And I personally think one of the cruelest things in the world is when someone spends years supporting a family, supporting a partner's career, raising children, emotionally holding everything together. Then, when the relationship ends, they're made to feel disposable, like their contribution somehow didn't count because it wasn't direct income. That is deeply unfair. Raising children is work. Supporting a household is work. Emotionally caring in a relationship is work. Helping someone build their success is work. And I think a lot of people watching this will emotionally understand exactly what I mean when I say this. Sometimes the financial abuse part isn't even the money itself. It's the fear that they have, the constant underlying fear of upsetting them, fear of having to ask for things. And I'm not talking luxury things, just little things. Fear of what happens if they leave. Fear of not surviving alone. Fear of having to start over, having to find a job. And when people live in fear long enough, they stop thinking clearly. They begin accepting dynamics they would never normally accept. And I really want people watching this to know, if you feel constantly controlled, diminished, anxious, guilty, trapped, or powerless around money in your relationship, please do not ignore that feeling. That feeling matters. Your nervous system notices things before your logical mind fully catches up sometimes. And another thing I want to mention, because I see this constantly, financial abuse often comes with emotional rewriting of reality, especially with narcissistic personalities. So someone may financially control everything, but still convinces you they are the victim. How can this look? They'll tell you you're lucky, you're ungrateful, You couldn't cope without me. No one else would help you like I do. These are things that they will say. Meanwhile, you're slowly losing confidence, independence, identity, and security. And this is why financial abuse can become deeply psychological, because eventually the person doesn't just fear losing the relationship. They start to fear losing themselves. Now, I also want to say something a little bit more hopeful here. I've seen so many people, and I mean so many people, rebuild themselves after this. Seriously. People who thought their life was over. People who hadn't worked for years because they've been looking after the children. People terrified to leave. People who genuinely thought they could not survive independently. And slowly, piece by piece, they started to rebuild their confidence. They found the confidence to ask for what they deserve and what they have rights to. They built an income. They built their own identity around money and finances. They got peace and freedom from that relationship. And eventually, many of them said something really, really interesting to me. They said the financial struggle was hard, but the emotional freedom was worth everything. That feeling of finally being able to breathe again, finally not feel monitored at every moment, finally not feeling guilty all the time, finally being able to exist peacefully, that mattered deeply to them. And if you've been through something like this, I genuinely would love to hear from you in the comments below. So not only because I read the comments, but because so many people reading them realize for the first time that they are not alone. And honestly, sometimes seeing other people describe your exact experience can be the thing that finally validates what you've been feeling for years. And if you take one thing away from this video, then let it be this. Love should never require someone to become powerless. A healthy relationship should make you feel safer, stronger, and in all times more secure. You should feel more supported, not frightened about your future if the relationship ended tomorrow. And if you're in a relationship where there is a severe imbalance financially, emotionally, or psychologically, then please, quietly, start protecting yourself. Not from a place of revenge, from a place of wisdom. Start to finally understand your situation. Educate yourself around your assets and income. Build confidence slowly. And remember that needing protection does not make you disloyal. It makes you responsible for your own well-being. And I see so many people don't take this responsibility. Anyway, I hope this video helped someone today. If it did, I release videos every single week around relationships, healing, narcissistic dynamics, emotional well-being, and mental clarity. And honestly, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribed and check out some of the other videos. And wherever you are in the world tonight, then please take care of yourself. Until the next video, see you soon.